All right, welcome everybody. This is the stats and standings video for the CSFL, which is the Canadian Simulation Football League. I'm your host, JD, Commissioner JD, and these are the standings right now. We got 1 week left, 8 teams, 7 weeks, everyone plays each other, and we're just finished week 6, and it looks like the playoffs are actually locked up a week early. And we're going to take a look at that right here, and then we're going to go through all the individual stats as well. So here they are. Blue Jays sitting on top before 1-1. Cobras at 4-2. Dragons at 4-2. Piranhas at 4-2. Gate, and these four make the playoffs. It's top four that make the playoffs, and it looks like that the Gators, Rhinos, and the Wildcats finish with a 2-3-1 and a 2-4 and a 2-4, and they will not be able to catch up to the team because there's only 1 week left. So even if they get 3, they still can't catch these guys if they lose. And then the Vipers finish at 1-5, depending on if the Vipers can beat the Wildcats this coming week, week 7, or if it depends on that if the Vipers will get first overall pick or not, right? And then we'll look at the points for Blue Jays are tied with the Wildcats, and then the Dragons and Gators are the top 4 for points for. And then we got points against. We got the Rhinos, or should I say who scored the least amount? We'll go to that first. 167, 188, and 198 are the 3 bottom, with the Vipers, Cobras, and Piranhas with the least amount of points scored, 3 least amounts, and then the Rhinos there at 201. When we look at points against, the Rhinos led up the most points with 219, and then 209 for the Wildcats, 204 for the Blue Jays, 203, and then 203 for the Dragons. And then the least amount of points against is the Cobras, and then the Piranhas, Vipers, and then the Dragons. The Vipers going 1-5 and still having one of the best defenses is pretty impressive. And then we'll look at the home record. It is the Piranhas that are 3-0 at the moment. At home, the only team to not lose at home yet. And then the Blue Jays are undefeated on the road. They had the one tie, and I believe the tie was on the road. I'm pretty sure. That's why it's on the road side. But yeah, they tied on the road, but they did not lose. Only team not to lose on the road yet. And then yes, the Wildcats or the Vipers and Rhinos do not travel well. Obviously, they are 0-3 on the road, and then the Vipers and Wildcats do not play well at home. That's for sure. Okay, and then we'll get right into the player stats, individual stats. We'll look at the league quarterback rating, the QBR rating, and that is Brendan Platt on the top with 147.3 for the Dragons. Then we got Ron Simmons, 146.7. Jeannie Ingram, 143.4. Eric Reeves, 141.9, and then Alonzo Graham, which I'm actually shocked is way up here with the big boys with efficiency. And then we got Ralph Dorsey, who's shockingly low, and then J.J. Horton and Derek Albright, who really was a big shock this season, what Derek Albright was unable to do with that stellar offense that he has. So, and then leading the league in touchdowns is Eric Reeves with 22. So we still got one more game to play, but let's see if he finishes with the most touchdowns and gets the most touchdown passing that may go into his votes for MVP of the season. So we got to keep in mind that we're voting for the MVP, offensive and defensive MVP. So, and then Eric Reeves also leads the league in yards with 180 or 180. 1,895 yards, almost 2,000, and I think he's going to crack 2,000 for sure. He's not going to throw under 100 yards. So, yeah, he's going to crack 2,000, and probably Brendan Platt will as well, which is pretty impressive. When it comes to touchdowns, Ralph Dorsey is second, so doesn't have as much yards and doesn't have as lot of efficiency. Isn't up there with the big guys with efficiency, 6th in the league out of 8, so 3rd worst. But he's got a lot of touchdowns, 21, and he has not thrown a lot of interceptions, even though 5 is a lot in this league, actually is the most. So, in 5 interceptions in 7 games, I guess, is a lot. And when you look at it like that, especially Ron Simmons here, who has thrown no interceptions. Ron the Don Simmons, 17-0. Tied with 3rd with 17 touchdowns, which actually 4 quarterbacks have 17 touchdowns, which is kind of funny to look at there. And then we'll look at the least amount of touchdowns is Derek Albright and J.J. Horton weren't able to really get in the end zone. That's quite a big difference from 22 to 13 or to 11. Weren't able to get it offensively done, but of course, Derek Albright and J.J. Horton have 2 of the best running backs in the league for sure. And then we look at interceptions again, 0, 2 for Brendan Platt, 2 and 2 for Jeannie Ingram. So both these quarterbacks were really efficient in the trade. They did not turn it over often, but yes, Jeannie Ingram had more yards and more touchdowns. And then most interceptions, we looked at that. Okay, then we'll look at most completions. 103, Brendan Platt, J.J. Horton. Holy crap, 103 completions, 97, 96, and 96. And then we'll look at the least amount of completions, and it goes to Alonzo Graham. He has not completed the ball as much, which is shocking because his running game is also struggling a lot. So that's kind of surprising to see that. Okay, and then we'll look at attempts. J.J. Horton also has the most attempts and the most completions. Ralph Dorsey is actually slanging it a lot more than I thought. He's thrown it 145 times in 6 games. Brendan Platt's thrown it quite a lot. And Derek Albright, for not getting a lot of touchdowns, has a lot of attempts. They are throwing the ball a lot in the Vipers, and maybe that's the problem with the Vipers, is that they're not running it. I'm going to keep in mind what Phil Clemens, the running back for the Vipers, attempts are. But yeah, and then we'll go to least amount of attempts. Again, it is Alonzo Graham. They do not throw the ball often, but when they do well. They score quick and fast, and they don't have a lot of time possession, but they definitely get it done. And then the second least is Ron Simmons. Eric Reeves leads the league in touchdowns, and he has the 3rd least attempts. So that's going to go towards his credit for the MVP consideration if he ends up being one of the MVP quarterbacks of the league. And when you're looking at it right now, it looks like it's Eric Reeves and Ron Simmons seem to be the 2 leading quarterbacks, and you'll definitely see those guys in the Snow Bowl. So the Snow Bowl is our version of the Pro Bowl, where all the All-Star game, all the All-Star players get selected to play in the Snow Bowl in the offseason, so look out for that. Completions here, 71% is Brendan Platt is actually the most completions in the league, which is phenomenal. He also has the highest quarterback rating, 17-2. He's got quite a lot of yards as well. Brendan Platt's also a good argument for MVP. Brendan Platt has been playing absolutely phenomenal football all season. It seems like every game he's not out, and he's also second in the league for yards per game at 300 yards a game, which is insane to think about. Eric Reeves, though, has the most yards per average, has the most yards per game. He's also right up there at 68%. Alonzo Graham is extremely efficient when he throws it. The left-handed quarterback for the Piranhas, Alonzo, long throw Alonzo, is extremely efficient. He was looking bad, or looking a little rough in the beginning. I know he had that two interception game, I believe it was, and everyone was worried about Alonzo. But man, the Piranhas really turned it around. And then Ron Simmons doing phenomenal with his quarterback, with his receiver, and hasn't made a mistake yet. Ron Simmons is flawless going into week 7. And then we'll look at sacks. The most sacks taken is Ralph Dorsey and Ron Simmons. So Ron Simmons rather take a sack than throw in interceptions, which is good to see. And then Jeannie Ingram, Eric Reeves, but still 4 sacks in 7 games is really good. It's really low, actually. So Brendan Platt and Derek Albright have only been sacked once, which I'm shocked. Derek Albright has only been sacked once, and he's had all these attempts, and he's not doing good. It's mind-boggling what's going on down there with the Vipers. They're probably, besides the Dragons doing really well, the Vipers doing really bad is probably the second biggest shock of this season for the CSFL, the Canadian Simulated Football League, because no one thought that the Vipers were going to do this bad. Not a chance, especially not me. And then J.J. Horton and Alonzo Graham were only sacked twice. So Alonzo actually was extremely efficient as well, and so was J.J. Horton. Did not get dragged down a lot. And then Jeannie Ingram up there with Eric Reeves with only 3 in 6 games, which is 1 every other game. So that's nothing to get crazy about. The longest passing touchdown or longest passing play, I guess, is 87 yards by Ron the Don Simmons. And then Eric Reeves 83, Jeannie Ingram 81, Derek Albright 80, Brendan Platt 79, and the shortest throw was from Ralph Dorsey, who's 69. A 69-yard pass is the shortest throw, so that's pretty good. Quarterback comebacks. Brendan Platt honestly could have 4, because there was 3 games that he led his team to come back and they didn't win. Was it 3? Maybe 2. I can't remember, but when you watch these Dragon games, man, Brendan Platt always comes back. Mr. Comeback, Brendan Platt. I'm telling you, he's phenomenal. And then Alonzo Graham had that one comeback there at home to win it, and did really, really well there, and really proud of what the Piranhas organization is doing down there in Piranha Swampland. And then Phil Clemens leading the league. So this is why, but even though he's leading the league with only 90 attempts, he's got 11 touchdowns. Is that the most in the league? It is. He's got the most touchdowns and the most rushing yards. And he's got the lowest attempts for a starter. Wow, okay, Phil Clemens is looking really good for MVP consideration. He's got 1 more week to crack 1,000 yards. He's got the most yards and the most rushing touchdowns with the least amount of attempts by a starting running back. So Phil Clemens, oh my goodness, give this guy the ball more, Vipers. If you're listening, which I hope you are, give this guy the ball, man. He needs it. And then so we'll look at yards. 852 by Grant, the power plant Williams, Mr. Radioactive Man. Has 10 touchdowns as well with only 91 attempts, only 1 off of Phil Clemens. So that's really exciting to see that, because he's right there with him, only a few yards, 60 yards less and 1 touchdown. So Grant Williams is right there with Phil Clemens. Those two are just really, really good running backs right now. And then the bullet train, Blaine Higgins, is just been leading his team to victory in every game. The last game he got held to 68 yards, I believe. But before that, he was averaging 100 yards. If not, I believe he had 100 yards in every game prior to last week. So he had 5 straight weeks with 100 yards rushing or more. but doesn't find the end zone too often. It's been going to Antrell Adams, the star wide receiver for the Blue Jays, has been getting the red zone looks. But Blaine Higgins has been really running the ball well. And then Mark Marshall here has been playing absolutely phenomenal. 750 yards rushing. He's got 10 touchdowns with ties for second in the league. He's got 114 attempts, quite a few more attempts, but they are giving him the ball, and that's what they need to do down in the Rhino land. They really turned the culture around from their team. They were didn't know their identity from pass to run, and they really came out running, and it really worked really well for them. And then we look at Willie Burnside, 716 yards, which is actually really surprising to see him not in the bottom of the list, because I thought he was not gonna. I thought the Piranhas were gonna struggle running the ball. They kind of did in average, but 716 yards ain't bad in 6 games. So it's still over 100 yards a game. 7 touchdowns, touchdown a game, just a little bit more, with only 95 attempts, which is kind of low. With 7.5 an attempt average is pretty stellar. And then R.J. Barber, he's got 709 yards, not a lot of yards, but lots of touchdowns. He's got 9, which I believe is tied, or is 3rd place, I believe, or 4th place, because there's a 2 tie. But 121 attempts. He's got a lot of attempts. I believe the most. It is. He's got the most attempts. And R.J. Barber's a great running back. And this guy needs the ball a lot more. And then Charles Hatchett. And then Matt Davis is the big shock for sure. But before we get into Matt Davis, Charles, the Axeman Hatchett, 639 yards, 5 touchdowns, 120 attempts, second most attempts. Only 5.3 average, but they give this guy the ball, and he controls the game for the Cobras, who are doing really well. And then Matt Davis, the outrageous Matt Davis, he is a phenomenal running back, but is clearly struggling with the Gators going, I believe it is 2-1 now. They're really struggling to find their identity on offense, because they are really good at passing the ball, but they have this phenomenal running back who's obviously not getting a lot of attempts and isn't getting a lot of yards or touchdowns. So I'm curious what the Gators are going to do about their running back situation, because they clearly want to pass the ball, because they're Eric Reeves, their quarterback, is just leading the categories in almost every category. So it's hard to go to Matt Davis when you got such a great quarterback like that in Eric Reeves for the Gators. And then when we look at the fumbles, everyone's had one, almost everyone, but who hasn't had one? So we'll go over. Looks like almost every starter's had one. Oh, no, Phil Clemens. Wow. Didn't fumble. Grant Williams did. Blaine Higgins did. Mark Marshall did not fumble as well. Burnside's R.J. Barber did not, and neither did Hackett, and neither did Matt Davis. So it was really just Willie Burnside's, Bullet Train, Blaine Higgins, Grant Williams, and Phil Clemens. Or not Phil Clemens, sorry. Grant Williams, Higgins, and Willie Burnside's. Just the 3 running backs there that fumbled. Then look at this break tackling. This is the one that's going to be crazy. 44 break tackles. Okay, so that's 44 broken tackles. 44 broken tackles. I'm getting the calculator. Divided by 6 games. That's 7.3. That's 7 broken tackles a game. Average. So this guy is almost getting like 7 to 10 broken. He had a game where he had 14, I believe, in one ball game, which is just absolutely bonkers to think about. And then Hatchett is up there with 41, 36 for Mark Marshall and Grant Williams. These boys can really run the ball. No wonder, because they're just breaking tackles left, right, and center. Willie Burnsides, Matt Davis, even with all those low attempts, he is right up there with all these guys. For broken tackles, they got to get him more involved. And then R.J. Barber, 28. And then 26, only 26. Phil Clemens don't need to break tackles. You can't catch him. This boy can run. Phil Clemens can run, and he does not need to break tackles because you got to get your hands on him in order to break a tackle. Boy's fast, right? And then we could look at after first hit, 556 of his yards, or after he got hit. Grant Williams, and then Mark Marshall, Phil Clemens, Willie Burnsides, and Blaine Higgins. Plus 20 yards, it is Phil Clemens for sure. I was going to say he gets a lot of breakaway plays. That's why he doesn't need to break as many tackles. He's got 9 plus 20-yard plays in 6 games. Keep that in mind. Then they got one more game to play. 7-6-6-6 for these fellow gentlemen here. And then the longest play is 81 yards by you-know-who, Phil Clemens. Grant Williams at 80 yards. 77 yards for Blaine Higgins, 75 for R.J. Barber, then 68 for Mark Marshall for the longest runs. Holy smokes, these guys are good. Okay, now let's get into this. It's already been 20 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to wide receivers yet. Oh, my goodness. Okay, Barry Perkins here, rookie wide receiver, leading the league with 41 receptions. Quincy Drennan at 34. Alan Dwight at 30, and then Andre Watson at 28. George Coyle, Eric Potts, Shane Lott. We got Chauncey Preston, Shane Clemens, Antrell Adams here, which I'm shocked he's only got 26 catches because I'm pretty sure he leads the league in touchdowns. Troy Jackson, 25 catches. Randy Dorsey, only 25 catches and only 3 touchdowns. What is going on with Randy Dorsey? They're giving the ball to Mark Marshall. That's what's going on. They need to give the ball. They need to get Randy Dorsey more involved. Just like how I feel the Gators don't utilize Matt Davis enough, I feel like the Rhinos do not utilize Randy Dorsey enough. That's for damn sure. And you can make the same argument about the Wildcats and a few other teams for sure. Wildcats definitely need to get Troy Jackson more involved and not lean on the run so much. But Rashad Pleasant here, really good receiver, second receiver up there with the starters. Brendan Platt definitely distributed the ball really well. Then Edgar Plummer here definitely had a disappointing season with only 282 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is not the Edgar Plummer that we know, and he still had a lot of catches. Well, not a lot of catches, but a few catches, that's for sure. But not a lot of productivity. Then I'll run through these last receivers real quick. Tito Snow, Jason Jones for the Vipers, and then Russell Hutton for the for the Rhinos. Michael Pounds there, only 1 touchdown. Des Edwards got 2 touchdowns, and then we're getting into the third and fourth stringers. They didn't even get any touchdowns here. Rob Freeborn got 3. I know he had a couple big threes, that's for sure. And then Kobe Bennett actually had 11 catches for a tight end, which is pretty good. And then Mitchell had 4 touchdowns, which is pretty good, that's for sure. Darnell Jones, the fullback, has 3 touchdowns, got 3 touchdowns, which is pretty cool. Willie Burnside's up there with 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mike Dixon, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Who the heck is this? Sam Neely, wide receiver, 2 touchdowns there. Elijah Lloyd, Adam Warwick, Blaine Higgins. Phil Clemens, only 4 catches, though. He did not participate in the passing game too much. That's for damn sure, which I'm very shocked. Same with Charles Hatchett. These guys need to get more involved in the passing game for sure. Okay, and then we'll get into the blocking. Most pancakes are by Dragons left tackle, Reggie Osborne, then Ryan Charles, right tackle, Keyshawn Davis, left tackle, Eric Sweeney? Almost said Swiney. Sweeney, 92 pancakes. Dear God, that's a lot. And then Doug Wilford. So is there 2 Rhinos up here? There are 2 Rhinos up there just pancaking people for J.J. Horton. Okay, and then we get right into the defense. The league leader in tackles is Alex Campbell. He already won a week 1 MVP, and now he leads the league in tackles. Holy smokes, that's pretty impressive over all the other players, all the safeties, all the linebackers, and it's Alex Campbell running down everybody. So that's pretty good. Alonzo Ferguson, middle linebacker for the Wildcats, has just been going nuts, running left and right and just dragging everybody down. Tony Diamond, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. 30 tackles, 1 for a loss. But oh yeah, look at Alex Campbell also had 2 picks. And by the way, he had those both in the same game, wasn't it? Pretty sure he had it in both the same game. And then Tony Diamond and then Quincy Hester right there with him. 3 for a loss. Not a lot of sacks, though. I can't help but notice there's not a lot of sacks. And then Josh George right up there with Alonzo Ferguson. So we see 2 Vipers and 2 Wildcats in the top 5 for tackles. Tim Christman, free safety, 28 tackles as well. Denard Rose, another Blue Jays, 28 tackles. Antonio Smith, and I believe he had 10 of these in one game. He's also got a sack as well. Calvin Hodges, he's got 27 tackles as well. And then another Wildcats, they're getting a lot of tackles because they're just getting lit up. They had one of the worst defenses in the league right now. 26 tackles as well. I'll just give this a quick little walkthrough for you. But yeah, there was not a lot of sacks and not a lot of interceptions, not a lot of defensive presence. That is for sure. We'll get right into sacks or tackles for a loss. Sheldon Holt leads the league for tackles for a loss with 5. And then Keel Barnes for the Wildcats is tied at second with 4 with Patrick Locker and Trenton Warwick, who are 2 defensive ends, which is really cool to look at, which may keep their job because they're looking to get replaced in the draft. I'm assuming there's only so many defensive ends, but I'm assuming that a lot of these teams are looking to replace their defensive ends, but it looks like the Rhinos and the Gators both have really good defensive ends for their position, along with the Dragons and the Wildcats, right? And then we'll look at sacks. There's only 3 people who have more than 1 sack, and that is Jake Smith of the Dragons, another Dragon, Percy Tillman, and then Timmy Seath are the only players to have it. 2 defensive tackles and 1 defensive end, and then a bunch of players that have just 1. Not a single big hit was laid, which is a lie, but it's okay. And then interceptions, looks like Jamie Foster is tied Brendan Mann with interceptions and is coming for Brendan Mann's defensive player MVP award, honestly, because they both got a defensive touchdown now after the Dragons game. So it was a clear decision who was the MVP before this week that just passed. It was looking like Brandon Mann, 6'3", corner for the Rhinos, but now Jamie Foster, who's a 5'8" corner for the Dragons, and he's the starter, I believe. He's the number 1 corner there. Got a defensive touchdown and another interceptions, which makes him tied. So I'm excited to see who comes here. But Brandon Mann's got more tackles and tackles for loss, which is going to go a long way. So let's see what Jamie Foster does in this next game, because it's really going to make a big difference for that team. We could even look at catches allowed. Looks like Brandon Mann had a lot more catches allowed than Jamie Foster. Also, pass deflections, but look at all the pass deflections. 14 pass deflections by Brandon Mann. Wow, he still got it. He's still got the my vote for defensive MVP of the league of the season, especially with that 14 pass deflections. And does that lead the league? It does. Look at that. Brendan Mann leads the league in pass deflections, up there with Eric Shields, Neil Mitchell, Brent Rennick, and Terry McGuire, 2 Piranhas up here. And yeah, Brandon Mann, 14 pass deflections. That is absolutely fantastic. Does he lead the league, though, and also in pass catches or catches allowed? No, Alex Campbell, Paul Ziegler, and then Brendan Mann is tied for 3rd for most catches allowed, which is kind of scary, though. But he's got 14 pass deflections, which leads the league. Really cool stuff there. Then Curtis Lindsey's got 2 forced fumbles, which is a Rhino middle linebacker, 6'1". Curtis, hot as a furnace, Lindsey. And then fumble recoveries, a bunch of people only got 1. Fumble yards, no blocks, no safeties, 2 defensive touchdowns, and they were from Jamie Foster and, you guessed it, Brendan Mann, who absolutely had a phenomenal season and is having a phenomenal season still. Yeah, so that's pretty much else. That's all there is for the defense. We're already at 30 minutes. The kicking game is kind of horrendous, but we'll look through it real quick. The highest efficiency was the 1 punter with the 1 kick, but Jason Williams had 10 attempts and only missed 1 for the Cobras. So the Cobras sitting easy in the kicking game, never had to worry. And same with the Piranhas with 8 out of 9 and then 8 out of 10. And then Jeremy Martin with 5 out of 7, 4 out of 6, 1 out of 2, 4 out of 9, 3 out of 9, which is ruthless, and then 2 out of 8, which is just brutal. But yeah, so that's the field goals, and then point afters. We can look at that just to get upset if we want. And then Dan Martin, kicker for point after. The Piranhas had the best kicking game by far with field goals and point afters. Never had to worry about a kick. Literally never had to worry about a kick. And then same with the Cobras. They have not really had to worry about the kicking game. It's definitely not affected them. And they both find themselves in the playoffs. Coincidence? I don't know. We'll see. Jeremy Martin also with Antonio Aleman. And then Tony Phillips, which I'm pretty shocked that he's up there with point afters. Actually, he could kick the point after real well, just not field goals, I guess. And Dusty Williams, 6'4" kicker, is the absolute lowest. And then I believe that's it. So punting, excuse me, punting is there's not a lot of punts in this league, absolutely. So, but the most punts were from the Blue Jays, Cobras, Dragons, and then the Gators. Least amount of punts was from the Piranhas. They do not punt the ball. They are very efficient. And then surprisingly, the Vipers are down here with the least amount of punts as well. Okay, and then the most punt yards, least punt yards. We can do kick return. Most kick returns. Entrell Adams had the most kick returns, but only Randy Dorsey was the only one to have more than 1 kick return touchdown, and he also leads the league in kick return yards with 900 kick return yards, which is no fucking joke. I never really considered any of this, but he definitely has really good returning abilities up there with Entrell Adams and Des Edwards, and these guys are making big differences for their team, especially for the Blue Jays, but it hasn't really come to effect with the Rhinos. But that is definitely a good field position. They're averaging at the 31-yard line, so that's pretty good. So not too sure why the Rhinos weren't able to capitalize on better field position when they had so many great field or kick returns, right? Longest was 101 and 101, 100. And then, yeah, okay. What else? Punt returns are pretty sad because there's only a few guys that have any punt returns. 4 was the most punt returns with 39 yards is the most yards. And he had it in 30, and he had a 31-yard return. So there's not a lot of returns, no touchdowns, obviously, no punts, no big things in the punt game. And then the game started. You can look at first downs. J.J. Horton, Brendan Platt, Jeannie Ingram, Ron Simmons, Derek Albright are the top 5. Then Eric Reeves, Alonzo Graham, and Ralph Dorsey, all quarterbacks for the most first downs. And then that is it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know who you think should be league MVP. We got one more week. But obviously we're looking, I'm leaning towards Eric Reeves, Ron Simmons, and Phil Clemens are obviously going to be top 3 for sure. And then we're going to also look at some of these receivers like Barry Perkins and Entrell Adams for the offensive MVP of the season is my votes. If you have any votes or who you think should be up there in consideration or candidate, let me know. Hope you enjoyed the video. It was a good one. We got one more week until the playoffs. Congratulations to the teams that made it. I'm excited for you guys, and also I'm excited for the teams that didn't make it because the draft is coming up, and it's going to be a good one. Have a good day. Talk soon.